There is a moment, when watching certain videos online, where logic quietly steps aside and curiosity takes over. It usually happens without warning. A single frame pauses too long. A face in the crowd looks out of place. An object appears decades before it should exist. And suddenly a simple clip turns into a question that refuses to let go. What if some of the people caught on camera do not belong to their time? The internet is filled with strange footage, but few categories generate as much fascination as alleged real-life time travelers. These are not science fiction characters or staged movie scenes. They are everyday people, recorded in ordinary situations, whose presence seems to contradict history itself. A man wearing sunglasses decades before they were invented. A woman talking into what looks disturbingly like a modern smartphone in the 1930s. A person dressed in contemporary fashion standing among crowds from the early 20th century. Each clip is brief, each moment fleeting, yet once seen they linger in the mind. What makes these videos so powerful is not just what they show, but what they imply. If even one of them were genuine, it would challenge everything we think we know about time, history, and reality. And that possibility, however remote, is enough to keep millions of viewers watching, replaying, slowing footage down frame by frame, and debating endlessly in comment sections across the world. Time travel has always occupied a unique place in human imagination. Ancient myths spoke of gods who could move freely through time. Philosophers debated whether the past and future truly exist or are merely constructs of the human mind. In modern times, science fiction gave these ideas new form, turning them into stories of machines, portals, and paradoxes. But the idea of time travelers caught on camera brings the concept uncomfortably close to reality. It removes the safety distance of fiction and places the mystery in front of us, raw and unresolved. One of the reasons these videos gain so much traction is that they often appear mundane at first glance. A crowd crossing a street, workers leaving a factory, a family picnic recorded on old film. There are no dramatic sound effects, no obvious special effects, no context telling us to expect something strange. The anomaly reveals itself only after careful observation, making the discovery feel personal, almost secret, as if the viewer has uncovered something hidden in plain sight. This sense of discovery triggers a powerful psychological response. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We are wired to notice inconsistencies, especially when they violate our understanding of how the world works. When we see something that does not fit, the brain searches desperately for an explanation. And when none is immediately available, the mystery becomes irresistible. One of the most discussed cases involves old black and white footage from the early 1900s, showing a group of people walking past a camera. Among them is a man who appears to be wearing modern sunglasses, a printed t-shirt, and holding what looks like a compact camera or device. His posture, clothing, and demeanor feel completely out of place compared to everyone else in the frame. The contrast is so striking that viewers often noticed him instantly, even without prompting. Supporters of the time traveler theory argue that such clothing simply did not exist at the time the footage was recorded. They point out details like the shape of the sunglasses, the casual cut of the shirt, and the relaxed body language that seems more in line with contemporary culture than early 20th century norms. To them, this is not just an odd fashion choice. It is evidence of someone who does not belong in that era. Skeptics, on the other hand, urge caution. They suggest that unusual clothing styles did exist, that fashion history is more complex than most people realize, and that assumptions about what people wore in the past are often based on limited references. They argue that the human brain tends to project modern interpretations onto historical footage, especially when image quality is poor or details are ambiguous. Yet even skeptics admit that some cases are difficult to dismiss entirely. There are moments where explanations feel strained, where coincidence alone seems insufficient. And it is precisely this tension between belief and doubt that keeps the phenomenon alive. Another widely circulated example comes from footage recorded during the opening of a bridge in the 1940s. In the crowd stands a woman who appears to be holding a small rectangular object to her ear, speaking into it as if on a phone. Her gestures look familiar to anyone living in the age of smartphones. She appears focused, engaged in conversation, seemingly oblivious to the historic event unfolding around her. When this video surfaced online, it ignited intense debate. Some viewers were convinced they were seeing a modern cell phone decades before its invention. Others proposed alternative explanations, suggesting the object could be a hearing aid prototype, a portable radio, or even a small camera. Family members of the woman later claimed she was testing an experimental device, though documentation of such technology from that era remains scarce. What fuels speculation is not just the object itself, but the behavior, the way she holds it, the way she speaks, the way she reacts. These are gestures deeply ingrained in modern culture, making the scene feel eerily familiar despite its age. The question then becomes, are we witnessing a genuine anachronism, or are we projecting present-day habits onto the past? Projection plays a significant role in how we interpret these videos. Our brains are influenced by context, expectations, and prior knowledge. When we live in a world saturated with technology, we are more likely to see technology everywhere, even where it may not exist. At the same time, history is not as static as we often imagine. Innovations frequently appear earlier than commonly believed. only to be forgotten, abandoned, or overshadowed by later developments. Still, some footage resists easy explanation. In certain clips, individuals not only look out of place but behave differently from those around them. They appear confident in front of the camera, making direct eye contact, smiling, or even acknowledging the lens in ways that feel distinctly modern. In early film footage, people often appeared stiff, confused, or unaware of being recorded. When someone behaves otherwise, it stands out sharply. This has led some theorists to suggest that time travelers would naturally behave differently if they were accustomed to cameras and media attention. Unlike people from the past who might not fully understand the purpose of filming, a visitor from the future would likely recognize the camera instantly and respond accordingly. While speculative, this idea adds another layer of intrigue to the analysis. Beyond individual clips, patterns begin to emerge when examining multiple cases. Certain decades appear more frequently than others. The early to mid-20th century seems to be a hotspot for alleged time traveler sightings. This period coincides with the widespread adoption of photography and film, increasing the likelihood of anomalies being captured. It also represents a time of rapid technological and cultural change, making anomalies more noticeable. There is also the question of motive. If time travel were possible, why would travelers appear so casually, blending imperfectly into crowds, risking exposure? Some suggest that these sightings are accidents, unintended consequences of time travel experiments. Others propose that the travelers are observers, historians, or researchers sent to study specific events. A more unsettling theory suggests that these appearances are deliberate, subtle signals meant to prepare humanity for a future revelation. Of course, there is also the possibility that none of this is real, that these videos are misinterpretations, hoaxes, or clever edits designed to exploit our fascination with the unknown. In the digital age, manipulation of footage is easier than ever. A single altered frame can spark years of debate, and once a narrative takes hold online, it can be difficult to separate fact from fiction. Yet what keeps people watching is not certainty, but uncertainty, the inability to reach a definitive conclusion. Each explanation raises new questions. Each debunking leaves room for doubt. This ambiguity is the engine that drives watch time, discussion, and repeated viewing. Another layer to consider is the reliability of historical records themselves. History is written by humans, preserved imperfectly, and filtered through countless biases. What we consider impossible today may simply be undocumented or misunderstood. Technologies can exist in experimental forms long before they become mainstream. Cultural norms can vary widely even within the same era. A single unusual individual does not necessarily rewrite history, but it can expose gaps in our understanding. Psychologically, these videos tap into a deeper desire, the wish that reality is more flexible than we are told. Time travel represents freedom from linear existence, from the finality of the past and the uncertainty of the future. It suggests that mistakes can be revisited, knowledge can be transferred, and destiny can be altered. Whether consciously or not, viewers project these hopes onto the footage they see. At the same time, fear plays a role. If time travelers exist, what does that say about free will, about causality, about the stability of our world? The idea is both thrilling and unsettling. It challenges the notion that history is fixed, that the present is secure, that the future is unwritten. As this video unfolds, it is important to maintain a balanced perspective. Belief without scrutiny leads to deception. Skepticism without openness leads to dismissal of genuine anomalies. The truth, if it exists, likely resides somewhere between these extremes. Each clip deserves careful examination, contextual understanding, and a willingness to question assumptions on both sides. In the next segments, we will explore some of the most famous and controversial cases in greater depth. We will analyze the footage, examine the historical context, and compare expert opinions with alternative theories. Some explanations may satisfy you, others may leave you more uncertain than before, and a few might challenge your understanding of time itself. For now, consider this. Every generation believes it understands reality better than the last, and yet history is filled with moments where certainty collapsed overnight. What seems impossible today often becomes obvious tomorrow. Whether these time travelers are real or not, the questions they raise are very real, and once those questions take hold, it becomes impossible to look at the past or the present the same way again. As viewers dive deeper into these clips, a pattern begins to emerge that goes beyond isolated curiosities. The most compelling cases are rarely the loudest or most dramatic. Instead, they are subtle, layered, and resistant to quick explanations. These are the videos that remain controversial years after their first appearance, continuing to resurface in compilations, documentaries, and late-night discussions. One such case involves footage from a 1920s sporting event, where a young man in the stands appears to be wearing clothing that feels distinctly modern. His hairstyle is neat and contemporary, his posture relaxed, and his jacket resembles designs that would not become popular for decades. More strikingly, he seems aware of the camera in a way that others are not. While most people glance briefly or avoid eye contact altogether, he looks directly into the lens, smiling casually, as if accustomed to being filmed. This moment lasts only seconds, yet it has been analyzed endlessly. Frame-by-frame breakdowns attempt to determine whether the clothing truly defies the era or if it merely resembles modern styles due to similarities in tailoring. Some historians point out that fashion evolves cyclically and certain cuts or patterns may appear earlier than commonly believed. Others counter that the combination of elements, rather than any single detail, makes the appearance suspicious. The debate intensifies when multiple anomalies appear in the same footage. It is one thing to dismiss a single unusual accessory. It is another when hairstyle, clothing, behavior, and demeanor all feel inconsistent with the surrounding context. At that point, coincidence begins to feel like an unsatisfying answer, even to skeptics. Another frequently cited example comes from a series of photographs taken during the rebuilding of a city after a major disaster in the mid-20th century. In one image, a man stands among workers wearing protective gear that looks remarkably similar to modern safety equipment. His sunglasses appear polarized, his clothing fits more like contemporary workwear, and he carries himself with a confidence that contrasts sharply with the exhausted expressions around him. Supporters argue that this image is particularly compelling because the equipment visible on the man was not mass-produced until decades later. They note the shape of the glasses, the material of the clothing, and even the apparent presence of logos or markings that resemble modern branding. Critics respond by highlighting the low resolution of the photograph, suggesting that what appears to be modern gear could simply be shadows, fabric folds, or visual artifacts. What makes this case persist is not the absence of explanations, but the lack of a single explanation that convincingly addresses all aspects at once. Each theory seems to solve one problem while creating another, and so the image remains suspended in uncertainty, inviting endless reinterpretation. As these cases accumulate, some researchers have attempted to categorize them. One category includes technological anomalies, where objects resembling modern devices appear in historical footage. Another focuses on behavioral anomalies, where individuals act in ways inconsistent with their era. A third category centers on fashion anomalies, where clothing or accessories appear far ahead of their time. While none of these categories alone prove time travel, their overlap is what fuels speculation. Technology-based anomalies are often the most controversial. The human eye is trained to recognize familiar shapes, and modern devices share certain design elements that stand out sharply against historical backgrounds. Rectangular shapes, smooth surfaces, and reflective materials immediately signal modernity. When such shapes appear in old footage, even briefly, they trigger suspicion. However, technology does not emerge fully formed. Many devices evolve through obscure prototypes and experimental designs. Early radios, hearing aids, and cameras often looked nothing like their later counterparts. Without comprehensive documentation, it is difficult to rule out the existence of forgotten or rare devices that could explain some of these sightings. Behavioral anomalies, on the other hand, are harder to dismiss. Human behavior is deeply influenced by culture and environment. The way people move, gesture, and interact with technology changes over time. When someone in historical footage displays behavior that feels unmistakably modern, it challenges conventional explanations. For example, there are clips where individuals appear impatient, distracted, or disengaged from their surroundings in ways that resemble modern attention patterns. They seem accustomed to constant stimulation, standing out among people who move more deliberately and appear more focused on their immediate environment. While this interpretation is subjective, it resonates strongly with contemporary viewers. Fashion anomalies occupy a gray area between perception and reality. Fashion history is often simplified in popular understanding, reduced to stereotypes of each decade. In reality, fashion has always been diverse, experimental, and influenced by individual tastes. What appears shocking today may have been unremarkable at the time. Yet when multiple fashion elements align too closely with modern aesthetics, doubt rises beyond individual cases. The internet itself plays a crucial role in shaping how these videos are perceived. Algorithms reward content that provokes strong emotional reactions, particularly surprise and confusion. Videos labeled as time travelers caught on camera are more likely to be shared, commented on, and debated. This creates a feedback loop where ambiguous footage is repeatedly framed as extraordinary, reinforcing belief over time. Confirmation bias further amplifies this effect. Once viewers are primed to look for time travelers, they are more likely to interpret anomalies as evidence rather than coincidence. Comment sections become echo chambers where speculation builds upon speculation, often drowning out skeptical voices. Over time, the narrative becomes stronger than the evidence itself, yet skepticism has its own biases. Dismissing all anomalies as hoaxes or misunderstandings can prevent genuine investigation. History has shown that unconventional ideas are often rejected initially, only to be reconsidered later. The challenge lies in maintaining critical thinking without closing the door entirely. Some researchers have attempted to trace the origins of specific videos, looking for original sources, unedited footage, and contextual documentation. In several cases, this approach has successfully debunked claims, revealing that footage was altered, misdated, or taken out of context. These debunkings are important, as they remind viewers that not everything online is authentic. However, not all cases are so easily resolved. Some footage lacks clear provenance, making verification difficult. Old films are often digitized multiple times, losing metadata and original context along the way. Photographs may circulate without information about who took them, where, or when. In these gaps, speculation thrives. Another intriguing angle involves theoretical physics. While time travel remains speculative, modern physics does not entirely rule it out. Concepts such as space-time curvature, wormholes, and relativistic time dilation suggest that time is not as rigid as once believed. While these theories do not support casual time travel into the past, they do challenge simplistic notions of linear time. For some viewers, the existence of these theories lends credibility to the idea that time travelers could exist, even if unintentionally. A malfunctioning experiment, a natural space-time anomaly, or a miscalculated jump could result in brief appearances in the past. These explanations remain firmly in the realm of speculation, but they provide a framework that feels more grounded than pure fantasy. Others take a more symbolic view. They suggest that these videos resonate because they reflect our relationship with history and progress. Seeing a modern-looking person in the past forces us to confront how much, and how little, humanity has changed. It blurs the boundary between then and now, reminding us that people of the past were not fundamentally different from us. There is also the possibility that some anomalies are intentional fabrications created long ago, not with modern audiences in mind, but as jokes, experiments, or artistic expressions. Early filmmakers and photographers were not immune to humor or creativity. Staging an anachronistic scene could have been amusing or provocative, even if its significance was lost over time. As the discussion deepens, an important question emerges: why do these stories endure? Why do people return to them again and again, even when explanations exist? The answer lies in the emotional experience they provide. These videos create a sense of wonder, a momentary suspension of disbelief that allows viewers to imagine a reality more complex than the one they inhabit daily. In a world where information is abundant and mysteries are quickly resolved, unresolved questions become precious. They offer a break from certainty, a space where imagination and inquiry coexist. Time traveler videos occupy this space perfectly, balancing on the edge between plausibility and impossibility. As we move forward, the analysis will become more critical. The next segment will examine scientific perspectives, expert analyses, and the most compelling debunking arguments. We will explore whether these anomalies can be fully explained through psychology, technology, and historical context, or whether some questions remain stubbornly unanswered. The deeper we look, the clearer one truth becomes. The fascination with time travelers is not just about the past, it is about our present uncertainty and our future curiosity. Whether real or imagined, these figures reflect our desire to understand time itself, and our fear that it may not be as stable as we hope. As the mystery deepens, the focus inevitably shifts toward explanation, not speculation, not imagination, but structured attempts to understand what is actually happening in these videos. This is where science, psychology, and historical analysis enter the conversation, often clashing with intuition and emotional response. For many viewers, this is the most challenging phase, because it forces a confrontation between what feels extraordinary and what can be reasonably explained. One of the strongest tools in debunking alleged time traveler footage is contextual reconstruction. When experts analyze old videos or photographs, they do not isolate the anomaly. They reconstruct the environment, the technology available at the time, and the social norms of the era. Objects that look futuristic often lose their mystery when placed back into their original context. For instance, many items mistaken for smartphones or recording devices turn out to be early forms of portable radios, hearing aids, or compact cameras. Some of these devices were experimental, rare, or produced in limited quantities, making them unfamiliar even to historians. When viewed through a modern lens, their unfamiliar shapes are easily misinterpreted. The human brain plays a significant role in these misinterpretations. Our perception is not objective. It is shaped by expectation, memory, and cultural conditioning. When we see a rectangular object today, our first association is a smartphone. That association is so strong that it overrides alternative interpretations, even when evidence suggests otherwise. This phenomenon is known as cognitive anchoring, and it heavily influences how we perceive ambiguous visual information. Pareidolia, the tendency to perceive meaningful patterns in random or vague stimuli, also contributes to the time traveler narrative. Just as people see faces in clouds or figures in shadows, viewers may see modern objects or behaviors in historical footage where none actually exist. Once the idea is planted, the brain fills in the gaps, reinforcing the illusion. Behavioral analysis offers another layer of explanation. What appears to be modern behavior may simply be individual variation. Not everyone in the past behaved according to rigid stereotypes. Some people were naturally expressive, confident, or curious. Others were early adopters of new technologies or trends. These individuals would naturally stand out in footage, even without being time travelers. Camera awareness is a particularly misunderstood factor. While early film audiences are often imagined as naive or confused by cameras, historical records show that many people were quite aware of being filmed. Some posed deliberately, smiled, waved, or exaggerated their movements. What we interpret as modern comfort with cameras may simply be personality rather than temporal displacement. Clothing anomalies too often dissolve under closer inspection. Fashion history reveals that many styles considered modern today existed in some form decades earlier. Sunglasses, for example, were used long before they became mainstream. Dark lenses were employed for medical reasons. Outdoor work and even fashion experimentation. What looks like a modern accessory may have been uncommon, but not impossible. Fabric quality and tailoring can also be deceptive. High-quality garments worn by wealthier individuals can resemble contemporary clothing, especially when viewed in low-resolution footage. Without color information or fine detail, it is easy to misjudge materials and construction. Digital manipulation must also be considered, particularly for footage that surfaced online long after it was allegedly recorded. Even subtle edits can create convincing illusions. A single altered frame, a cropped image, or adjusted contrast can dramatically change how an object appears. In some cases, original footage has been found that clearly contradicts viral versions, exposing deliberate or accidental alterations. However, not all explanations are purely dismissive. Some scientists acknowledge that time itself is far more complex than everyday experience suggests. According to modern physics, time is not a universal constant. It can stretch, compress, and behave differently, depending on conditions such as speed and gravity. Astronauts aboard space stations experience time slightly differently than people on Earth, a fact confirmed by precise measurements. While this does not imply that casual time travel into the past is possible, it does challenge the idea that time is absolute. Theoretical models involving wormholes or closed time-like curves suggest that, under extreme conditions, movement through time might be conceivable. These models remain unproven and highly speculative, but they provide a scientific backdrop that makes the concept less absurd than it once was. This scientific ambiguity leaves room for alternative interpretations. Some theorists propose that time travelers might not be physical beings moving through time, but rather projections, echoes, or informational anomalies. In this view, what we see on camera could be distortions caused by interactions between timelines rather than deliberate visits. Others suggest that if time travel were possible, it would be heavily regulated. Any appearance in historical footage would be accidental or unavoidable, not intentional. This could explain why alleged time travelers do not attempt to hide perfectly, yet also do not interfere with events. They appear briefly, unnoticed at the time, only to be scrutinized decades later. Skeptics argue that such explanations complicate the issue unnecessarily. They emphasize Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. From this perspective, misinterpretation, coincidence, and human imagination are sufficient to explain the phenomenon. Introducing time travel adds complexity without necessity, yet even Occam's razor has limits. It is a guideline, not a law. History contains many examples where the simplest explanation turned out to be wrong. New discoveries often require abandoning comfortable assumptions. This is why some researchers advocate for cautious open-mindedness rather than outright dismissal. Another important factor is the emotional investment of viewers. Once someone becomes convinced that a particular video shows a time traveler, evidence to the contrary may feel personally threatening. This is known as belief perseverance. The idea becomes part of the viewer's worldview, making debunking efforts feel like attacks rather than analysis. Conversely, those committed to skepticism may dismiss anomalies too quickly, unwilling to entertain even remote possibilities. Both extremes limit understanding. The most productive approach lies between belief and disbelief, where evidence is examined without emotional attachment to a specific outcome. The cultural context in which these videos gain popularity also matters. Periods of uncertainty, rapid technological change, and social instability tend to produce greater interest in time travel narratives. When the present feels unpredictable, the idea that someone from the future has already navigated it offers strange comfort. It suggests that survival, and perhaps progress, is possible. These narratives also reflect anxiety about technology itself. Seeing modern devices in the past blurs the line between progress and intrusion. It raises questions about whether technological advancement is inevitable, cyclical, or even predetermined. In this sense, time traveler videos are less about literal travel and more about our relationship with innovation. As analysis continues, it becomes clear that no single explanation fits all cases. Some videos are convincingly debunked, others remain ambiguous. A few resist explanation entirely, not because they prove time travel, but because the available evidence is insufficient to reach a conclusion. And uncertainty, more than proof, is what sustains fascination. This unresolved state is not a failure of investigation. It is a reflection of the limitations of evidence, memory, and interpretation. Cameras capture moments, not context. They freeze time without explaining it. And when those frozen moments contradict expectation, they invite stories. As we approach the final segment, the focus will shift from analysis to reflection. What do these videos ultimately tell us about truth, belief, and the human need for mystery? Are we searching for evidence of time travel, or for something deeper reminder that reality may still hold surprises? The final block will explore these questions and bring the journey to a conclusion designed to keep viewers thinking long after the video ends. as the journey reaches its final stage. The question is no longer whether these videos prove the existence of time travelers. The deeper question is why they continue to matter, even after analysis, debunking, and endless debate. What keeps millions of people watching, rewatching, and discussing footage that may never offer definitive answers? The truth is that these videos operate on two levels at once. On the surface, they present a mystery that appears visual, technical, and historical. But beneath that surface, they touch something far more human. They confront our relationship with time itself, with memory, with progress, and with the fragile certainty we attach to reality. Time feels solid in daily life. The past is behind us, the future ahead, and the present slips through our fingers moment by moment. Yet physics, philosophy, and experience all suggest that time is far stranger than it appears. It stretches, it compresses, it bends under extreme conditions. And while we may not travel through it freely, we are constantly shaped by it. When viewers see a person who seems out of place in history, they are not just reacting to a visual anomaly. They are reacting to the possibility that time is not as closed as they have been taught, that the past might still be accessible, that the future might already exist, that the linear story of humanity could be incomplete. Even when explanations exist, they rarely satisfy on an emotional level. Rational answers resolve facts, but they do not erase wonder. In some cases, debunking actually strengthens fascination, because it forces viewers to confront how easily perception can be manipulated. If the mind can be fooled so convincingly, what else might it be missing? There is also an uncomfortable implication hidden within these stories. If time travelers were real, and if they were appearing in historical footage, then history itself might not be fixed. It might be observed, influenced, or even edited. This idea challenges deeply held beliefs about causality, responsibility, and free will. It suggests that the past is not sacred, and the future not entirely open. On the other hand, if time travelers are not real, then these videos reveal something equally powerful. They expose how easily humans create meaning from ambiguity, how quickly narratives form when information is incomplete, how belief can spread faster than verification. In this sense, the phenomenon becomes a case study in collective psychology. The internet accelerates this process. A single clip can be shared across the world in minutes, stripped of context, reframed with dramatic titles, and reinforced by thousands of comments. Each viewer adds interpretation, emotion, and speculation, transforming the original footage into something far larger than itself. Over time, the story becomes more real than the evidence. Yet, dismissing these videos as mere illusions misses an important point. Curiosity itself is not foolish. Questioning reality is not weakness. Every major scientific breakthrough began as an anomaly, something that did not fit existing models. Without curiosity, progress would stall. Without imagination, inquiry would fade. What matters is not whether one believes in time travelers, but how one engages with the mystery. Do we seek understanding or validation? Do we question assumptions or defend conclusions? The way we respond to these stories reveals more about us than about the footage itself. Some viewers watch these videos hoping for confirmation that reality is stranger than it seems. Others watch to prove that it is not. Both motivations are valid and both reflect a desire for clarity in an uncertain world. The tension between these perspectives keeps the conversation alive. It is also worth considering the role of storytelling. Humans are natural storytellers. We organize experience into narratives because stories help us remember, relate, and learn. A person out of place in time is not just a visual anomaly. It is a character in an unfinished story. And unfinished stories demand attention. This is why these videos work so well as long-form content. They invite reflection rather than resolution. They reward patience. They linger after the screen goes dark. They make viewers question what they thought they knew, not just about history, but about perception itself. As technology continues to advance, the line between authentic and artificial will only become harder to define. Future footage will be clearer, sharper, and more easily manipulated. At the same time, tools for verification will improve. The battle between belief and skepticism will intensify, not disappear. In that future, the lessons from these time traveler videos will remain relevant. They remind us to slow down, to examine evidence carefully, to remain open without becoming gullible, to question without abandoning reason. These skills matter far beyond this topic. Perhaps the most honest conclusion is this: we do not know everything and we never have. History is incomplete. Science is evolving, perception is flawed. Mystery is not a failure of knowledge, but a natural part of discovery. Whether time travelers have truly been caught on camera may never be definitively answered. Some cases will fade as explanations emerge, others will persist, unresolved, quietly challenging certainty, and a few will continue to resurface generation after generation, inviting new eyes and new interpretations. What matters is not choosing a side, but staying curious, staying critical, staying aware of how easily the mind fills gaps with meaning. In doing so, we honor both skepticism and wonder, logic and imagination. As you reflect on what you have seen and heard, consider this question: if you had been standing in those crowds, if you had been captured on film decades ago, how would you appear to viewers today? Would your clothing, your gestures, your habits seem ordinary or strangely out of place? How much of what we consider normal is simply a product of time? And perhaps the most compelling thought of all is this: if time travelers did exist, if they walked quietly among us or our ancestors, history might not announce them with certainty. It might reveal them only in fragments, in brief glances, in moments that feel wrong but cannot be proven false. And maybe that is enough, because sometimes the power of a mystery lies not in solving it, but in allowing it to remind us that reality is deeper than we assume, and that time, like truth, may hold more layers than we can see. If this story made you question what you thought you knew, if it sparked curiosity rather than certainty, then the journey has done its job, and the conversation does not end here. It continues every time someone pauses a frame, asks a question, and wonders just for a moment whether the past is truly finished, or if it is still watching us from somewhere beyond the frame.